Yeah, a lot of things I've got all my stuff from there. Okay, everything's supposed to be working now. Everything is supposed to be working the way it's supposed to be working now. And then we think about it, it's one day, 24 hours. How did we come up with 24 hours? You know, why is there 24 hours in a day? Why isn't it just 10 hours in a day or 12 hours in a day? Who decided that? And how come there's 30 days in some months and 31 days in other months? Were there gaps between days? When God was creating heaven and earth and all those things that he was producing on earth, how long was a day? Because, you know, a day, time is of no significance to God. So we say 24 hours, but was it actually 24 hours back then? I can't answer that. Some of us, none of us can answer that probably. So where should we go to find some answers that we can find? Well, where else? We should not speak if we're not certain about certain things. In other words, if I'm not sure about something, I shouldn't tell you, well, this is this and this is that, and that's the way it goes. If I don't know, I'm just going to tell you that I don't know. And that's the way we all should do. Not knowing and telling people that you don't know is better than trying to guess and giving people the wrong information. And that made me think of, you know, people believe something that you tell them, and if it's not true and they go by what you say and they commit a sin, then they're guilty of a sin, but you're also guilty because you led them to that sin. Genesis was not written for us in the 20th century. There's no way it could have been written for us in the 20th century because it was written for those that were living in that time and in that culture. Because if we started talking about, if we started talking about DNA or microscopic cells, or if he had started talking about DNA or microscopic cells, it wouldn't have made no sense to them back in those days. And you know, you often wonder just how often, you know, did they wash their hands and stuff. But they did do a lot of washing hands before they ate and stuff. But they didn't know about microcells and germs and stuff like that. Okay, it had to be written for those people in a way that they would understand, because if they didn't understand it, then they couldn't follow what was written. And one thing we talk about is that they knew nothing about atmosphere as the way we know it. They didn't know anything about they had their own ideas about it. If you saw the printout that he had in Google, he had that. They never really thought, and I'm going to wind up saying it again, I know, is that the earth was, that there were actually three things. There was water above, there was a firmament on the earth, and there was waters below. Yeah, got it right in order, water above. And when it rained, and I got rain highlighted there, they thought a vault opened up or that some windows opened up and that water came down. But you can say that, but in the beginning, well, yeah, because in the beginning, did it rain? Anybody? Did it rain in the beginning? Was there rain? There was no rain for a long time. There was no rain until Noah. That's when it rained. That was the first time it rained. The way plants and vegetation got water was by the dew. There was no rain until Noah's time. It said, look at Genesis 7:11. It said, in the 600th year of Noah's life, in the second month, on the 17th day of the month, on that day, all the sources of the vast watery depths burst open. The floodgates of the sky were open. That's when the first time they actually saw some rain. And they talk about the floodgates. They believed that the water came through floodgates or windows. And I don't know, it was just up there and those gates were holding the water back. The Bible speaks in terms that would have made sense to the original audience. Like I said, I was reading and it wasn't making sense to me till you go back and you read it again and you try to figure out exactly what it's saying. The Bible is a theological affirmation. And I'm going to give you the definition of theology somewhere down the line. But what do you think theology means? Anytime you say ology, you know it's a study or something. But we'll see what it means. It tells that all creation belongs to God, and God and his creations are bound together in a distinctive and delicate way. And normally when I'm saying things, when most of us are saying things, we get it from someone, and they usually, a lot of times I don't usually give their name, but this guy, this one who said this was Walter Brueggemann. Now I know on studylight.org, there are 50 commentaries that you can read, free. But you got to watch some of the commentaries, you know. Each commentary is one man's opinion. Most of the time they go along with some of them, and it doesn't make any difference if he's a member of the Church of Christ. Just because he says something doesn't mean that it has to be wrong, because they do agree on a lot of things. I like to read Matthew Henry, but when you read Matthew Henry, you get a verse about this big, and he'll give you an explanation about that big. And I also like to read James Kaufman. He's a member of the church. And Guy N. Woods, I think he's a member of the church. But Guy N. Woods has some strange ideas when it comes to divorce and marriage. Okay, we got 2 questions for you. What does it mean to be creative? Hello? Anybody? What does it mean to be creative? I meant to say that. Never use a word to describe the word that you're trying to give a definition of. Coming up with your own thing, of your own. Or what? Something, I guess you could say it's unique. Something new. Now, here's a question for you. I don't want you to think about somebody that you know about. I want you to think about somebody who you know is a creative person. Well, tell me. I'm just asking you. Who you know. That you know. In what way? All right. Okay. All right. What about you, Avon? Your brother? What does he do? You know, that's the same thing I thought about. I thought about Sarah, and I also thought about Jaden. How many people you know can cook good? I'm going to leave that alone. Well, only thing I know about Chris is he know how to make, what's some thing we talking about? Excuse me, we know that you're you're biased. But people, but like I said, I thought about your daughter, and I thought about Jaden. You know, some people, no, but some people just do. They just learn a routine, and they just do a routine, you know. Okay, I'm not going to argue with you. Okay, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, I'm not going to argue with you. Being creative. Oh, this chapter informs us that God is both creator and sustainer of the world. You know, if it wasn't for God, we would either freeze to death or we would burn up. Because why does the earth stay where it is and the sun stay where it is, and we just rotate around the sun at a certain distance from the sun so that we don't get, but sometimes you think about that freeze we had. we usually don't get too cold or too hot because that's God is still in the plan. The Bible is a theological book. And we look at theology. Here's what Webster says. The study of religious faith, practice, and experience, especially the study of God and of God's relationship to the world. And the Bible tells the truth. Here's one thing. The Bible is one book. But we got so many people that read the one book, and they come up with different ideas all about the same book. Everybody got different ideas. Otherwise, we wouldn't have all the different religions that we have that believe in the Bible. Let me see. Let's say Muslims. 50 to 75% of what's in the Quran comes out of the Holy Bible. You say tomato, I say tomato. There you go. Okay, and what about Jesus Christ? The Jews got the Torah and they read the Bible. I don't think they some of them don't go too much for the New Testament. But what do they think about Jesus? They don't believe that he's the Son of God. That's what the Muslims believe. Believes he was a prophet. He was not the Son of God. Bible stories are told differently by different cultures. I know that some Bibles tell us about Isaac and different other stories, but they don't all have to be the same. They differ somewhat in some ways. And when you even think about it, how many wise men were there at Jesus' birth? He says 3.
We have an online question.
What's the online question?
It says, well, he is not the Messiah? 3?
He is not the Messiah.
I'm not sure. Go ahead. I'll wait till.
Okay.
Type it in question form.
Okay. Now I lost my track. Oh, wise men. How many? It doesn't say how many wise men there were. It says that they were given 3 different types of gifts. Frankincense. I can't remember them all, but I know frankincense was one. Myrrh and gold, was it? Well, it was 3 things that he was given, but they didn't never say that there were 3 wise men. But that story has gone along forever. And also, when is Jesus' birthday? Everybody says that's when we celebrate his birthday, but there's a lot of questions about being December 25th. Where did they get that from? And well, there's a lot of questions about a lot of things that people come up with out of the Bible. Account in Genesis was written. It tells you right there. How long after this account occurred was it written? It was hundreds of years later on that it was written. And I was thinking about this because back then, how did things get passed on from mouth to mouth or from family to family? And we used to do a little thing in school. We used to get people up and line them up when they first came to school. And you would tell them one thing, and they're supposed to repeat it on down the line, and by the time it got to the last person, it wasn't the same as what it started out with. So well, you would imagine they had to be accurate because they had to start learning the Torah when they were, 13 years old? Here we go. Genesis 1 and 2. In the beginning, God created the heaven and the earth. Now the earth was formless and empty. Darkness covered the surface of the watery depths, and the Spirit of God was hovering over the surface of the waters. Now, I told you I had problems with that about what was there in the beginning? I was saying, okay, now the earth was without form, so that means that the earth was there. And then he gave it form, so the earth was there in the beginning. But if you just read the first verse, it says, in the beginning, he created the heaven and the earth, so the earth wasn't there in the beginning. What do we mean when we talk about in the beginning? The beginning as we know it. What is the beginning as far as God is concerned? Nothing. There was no, it always was. And there was no before and there's no after. It just is. God existed before the beginning of time as we know it. Time for us didn't begin until the heaven and earth were created. I don't know why I came up with this. This happened to just be a word in the lesson, and I meant to look it up to see how you're supposed to pronounce it. I'm going to say merism or whatever. But it means the extremes. When you're talking about this, when you're talking about everything, you just give the extremes of it. Like you talk about high and low. What does that mean? Say I search high and low. Does that mean you just search high and you just search low? What about everything in between? And that's the same thing with God. God created the heaven and earth and everything else. And you can also say, what's the other one? Old and young. Every man in here, old and young. But what about the ones in between? That includes everybody. That's what a merism is. I don't even know why they brought it up, but he did it. He created heaven and earth and everything else. To create. Now, this is a definition. I think this came out of Webster. To make or cause to be or become. God creates things and situations. Sometimes we get in situations and we don't know why we get in them, but they're supposed to be probably for our benefit, even though sometimes we think, oh man, this is too rough. Okay, they said the earth was formless and empty before God began his work. So looking up this, I talk, there are also, people say that it was nothing but chaos. There was earth and there was water and land, but it was just all mixed in together. There was nothing. You could say it was chaotic. Then some people say you shouldn't use the word chaotic, but it was just there. Then God came and did what he did. He put order to those things that were there. He organized the things that were there. And then the Holy Spirit moved over the earth. And I look up the word for Holy Spirit. I still can't pronounce it in the Hebrew. I know it's B-R. Now, how you pronounce that? I don't know. I don't know. Bara. Okay, if you say so, I'll take your word for it. Yeah, it's like the wind. What are the implications of saying, in the beginning, God? What does that imply to you? Okay, that's for you. Everything takes place. That's what you think of it. This is where it starts. In the beginning, God. That means that there more or less was nobody else but God. You know what it makes me think about? Wait, let me give you an answer. Did you have the same answer he had? Oh. Creation. Okay. What I was thinking about, now he says I might be getting a little bit ahead of myself, but I'll wait. Well, no, I'm going to say it now. It says he created. And he said he created the heaven and earth and everything else, and we know he created animals and human beings and stuff. But how come they never say anything about angels? Are angels created beings?
Sounds like breathing. Sound like breathing.
That's me then. Right. But he just doesn't mention it at this time. You know, why he doesn't mention it, I don't know. But the angels were created beings. When God, oh, go ahead. Is that what he was doing? He was asking the question?
Sound like breath.
Sound like breath. Oh, breath. Oh, you talking about the word breath. Oh, okay. Oh, okay, bruh.
No, it begins with an R.
It begins with a B.
It does begin with an R. That's the word.
Well, there's another. Well, when I saw it, it said BR. Okay. Like I said, you can have you look at one thing, I look at one thing, and you look at another, and it all come out. But does it really matter? In the long run, it doesn't matter. You pronounce it any way you want to. God knows how it was pronounced. Describe the word that God had before him when describe the work that God had before him when creation began. In other words, before he started his work. Okay.
And it wouldn't be work for him. I mean, it's not really work. It says describe the work that God had before him when creation began.
He was bored.
He was I don't think God could be bored. But I don't know if I can give you the right answer for that, but I don't think he was bored.
Lonely.
Lonely. Well, wait a minute. You can't say he was lonely because there was others there with him. Because you know that there was, and we're going to get to that there was a Trinity. So he couldn't have been lonely. He had others with him. But, huh?
Yeah, that was one of the comments from Sister Bod.
Oh, okay. Okay. Now y'all answer these questions, and y'all get me all off online. Oh, I know what I was thinking. I was saying before he began his work. What did I tell you? Before he began his work, he had created heaven and earth. But before he actually began making things on the earth and getting the oil, there was nothing there. You know, and that brings to mind when I think we mentioned this about, was there light and darkness? There was no light. Was there darkness? Well, in the beginning, when he created the heaven and earth, it was without form, and there was darkness. And you know, when there's darkness, there cannot be no light. So that kind of tells you why he had to come up and create light, source for the night, and a source for the day. Right.
He was imagining was wild, and
He was imagining the world. We're getting questions online. When he gets it right out, I'll come back to it. How do we make sense of a God that has always existed? To you, Sister Stevens, how do you make sense of that? All right. I'm going to tell you the truth. That was my answer. I can't make sense of it. Right. And you know, it really doesn't have anything to do with it when you think about it, but our minds, you know about what percentage of our brain we use? We use a very small percentage of our brain. You had a question, Yvonne? You had a question?
Oh, yeah. Sister Bob said his imagination was wild, and here we are.
He was using his imaginary mind. Huh? Yeah. That's a private joke. That's okay. I can't imagine. I mentioned this the other day about I can't imagine how God could do the things that He can do. How He can count the hairs on your head. I mean, He could probably do it on my head a lot easier than He can do it on yours, but you just can't imagine that. How could He know how many stars there are in the sky? Genesis 1 and verse 3 through 25. I'll tell you what, all those 22 or 23 verses are there, and I'm gonna let y'all read them. Y'all read about 3 of them at a time. You want to start with Brother Brown? Read 3 of them from Genesis 1, 3 to Genesis 3, 4, 5.
In the beginning, God created the heavens and the earth. The earth was without form and void, and darkness was in the face of the deep. And the Spirit of God was hovering over the face of the waters. Then God said, "Let there be light," and there was light. And God saw the light, and it was good. And God divided the light from the darkness. I did. That was 4. I just didn't see the number.
You read 3 and 4?
No, he didn't read 4. He stopped.
Oh, go ahead, read 4 and 5.
God saw that the light was good, and God separated the light from the darkness. God called the light day, and the darkness he called night. There was an evening, and there was a morning, one day.
Oh, stop right there for a minute. The reason I wanted to stop right there right a minute because I got this thought on my mind, and I had it on my mind all afternoon and this evening. God, there was an evening, and there was a morning, one day. Now, when we think of a day, what normally we'll say? We'll say there's morning, and then there's afternoon, and then evening. And that made me wonder, when does the Sabbath begin? I mean, this doesn't have to be so, but y'all should know when does the Sabbath start? Sabbath starts Friday evening. And it doesn't have to be so, but I'm wondering, is that why, he created, there was evening and then there was morning. Instead, like we say, it was morning, noon, and night. But that's just something that came on my mind about. And it was bugging me and making me think about the Sabbath, that it started Friday evening. Next verse. Anybody?
Sunset.
Okay, what you going to say, Brother Bob?
Sunsets.
Sunset. Okay, that's when evening starts, right. Number 7.
God made the expanse, and God made the expanse and separated the water under the expanse from the water above the expanse, and it was so.
And that's what we talked about when we talked about the 3 layers. They believed there was water above, then the expanse, and there was water below. And they had the floodgates opened up, and the water came down. Go ahead, read one more. Then God said, "Let the water under the sky be gathered into one place, and let the dry land appear." And it was so. Because it was so unorganized. Now God is organizing things. He's taking the water and separating it from the land. God called the dry land earth, and the gathering of the water he called seas. And God saw that it was good. Then God said, "Let there be light," in the expanse to the sky of the sky to separate the day from night. They will serve as signs for seasons and for days and years. And who figured out that 365 days was going to be a year? They will be lights in the expanse of the sky to provide light on the earth, and it was so. God made the two great lights, the greater light to rule over the day and the lesser light to rule over the night, as well as the stars. You know, when do people do all the evil stuff at? Most of the time, but it's getting so in this world, they do evil stuff in the daytime. It don't make any difference. It used to be that you had to worry about getting robbed at night, but now they rob your house in the daytime while you're home. To rule the day and the night, and to separate light from darkness, and God saw that it was good. Evening came, and then morning, the fourth day. Then God said, let the water swarm with living creatures, and let birds fly above the earth across the expanse of the sky. So God created the large sea creatures and every living creature that moves and swarms in the water according to their kinds. He also created every winged creature according to its kind, and God saw that it was good. God blessed them. Be fruitful, multiply, and fill the waters of the seas, and to let the birds multiply on the earth. Evening came in the morning, the fifth day. Then God said, let the earth produce living creatures according to their kinds, livestock, creatures that crawl, and the wildlife of the earth according to their kinds, and it was so. And so God made the wildlife of earth according to their kinds, the livestock according to their kinds, and all the creatures that crawl on the ground according to their kinds, and God saw that it was good. And we read through the text detailing God's creative work. And you know what? We discovered that there's a pattern. And you might not see it, but there is. He always makes an announcement. There's an announcement. God said, and then there's an order. Let there be light, darkness, whatever. Then the fulfillment, because it was so what he had spoken. We coming to that, bro. Don't get into my lesson. We coming up on that. I'm sorry. And God made, all right. Approval. God saw that it was good. Then he named them, or he blessed it. God called the night day, and the day.
I have a comment from Sister Bob. I wonder if living things such as animals, trees, were meant to live forever. And if Adam and Eve had sinned in the garden, haven't sinned in the garden.
Well, I don't know. But what about Adam and Eve? Were they made to live forever? As far as I know, they were. They had everything they need. And then they sinned, and then that's when they died. He said, if you eat from this tree, you will surely die. And they died.
I was the one that showed that I had authority over that church or that building, or in this case,
and it's going to mention
daylight in the nighttime.
It's going to mention something like that. Like when he speaks with authority and as a king. As far as we know, as a king would be speaking.
Yeah, that was their mentality then too, when someone said that.
And you're gonna need to remember something. Well, I'm gonna say it out of order, but it don't make no difference. That they didn't know about the Trinity. They knew about God. I wonder about that because the word that they use, I know Elohim, it says it's in the plural. When it was in the plural, they didn't know that it meant plural. They said they didn't know about there being a God, but I guess they were thinking about whatever the Godhead was, there was one. You know, but they always thought it was just one God. And they are one. Mention of days, and there was evening and there was morning, the first day. There is order in the way things were done, even though it may not seem so. Even though it may not seem so. The number 7 is emphasized, and you might not even realize it. And the number 7 means what? Completeness or perfection. And he's going to mention 7 things where you can utilize the number 7. Now, why they came up with this, I don't know, but listen to this. Genesis 1:1 has 7 words in Hebrew. Genesis 1:2 has 14 words in Hebrew. And what's, they wrote it up there for you, 7 times 1, 7 times 2. Genesis 2:1-3, the closing verses have 35 words. That's 7 times 5. God, Elohim in Hebrew, is mentioned 35 times. Earth is mentioned 21 times. Now, I'm not sure if he's talking about Genesis 1 or the book of Genesis. Heaven, firmament, is mentioned 21 times.
That was interesting that when it talks about firmament here, it talks about heaven. And your version of it was almost completely different than what it says in the version I have.
What is it saying in one here?
Let me see. So like in 7, that God made the firmament divided the waters from under the firmament, from the waters which were above the firmament. And it was so, and God called the firmament heaven.
Okay, yeah, heaven and sky. That's basically the same, just how you look at it. But if you read, what does it say? I got a verse here that says, I guess I don't. Nope, I guess I don't have it there. Trying to get back to where I belong. Here we go. I know we're getting close to it. Oh, here we go. Okay, here we go. When we look at the first days, we see that on the first 3 days, God creates spaces, and on the second 3, he creates the inhabitants. First 3 days, he creates spaces, and on the second 3, he creates the inhabitants. This was just what you was talking about. I think that's what you was getting ready to get in. Okay, that's exactly what it's going to say. For example, on the 3rd day, God creates land, and on the 6th day, God creates the inhabitants of land. This doesn't work out exactly perfect, but the pattern is certainly noticeable. When we look at the first 6 days, we see that on the first 3 days, God creates the spaces, and on the second 3, he creates the inhabitants. And this chart below will show you what it kind of looks like. On the first day, he had the light. On the 4th day, he had the sun, the moon, and the stars. On the second day, he had heavens and waters. And on the 5th day, birds and fish. It was all going on. He didn't create a place. He didn't create things to be a place where there was no place for them to be. He created a place for them to be, and then he created them. 3rd, dry ground. Then he had the animals, humans. And on the 7th day, it was the Sabbath. And he rested on the 7th day. Now, why did God rest? Oh, anybody know? Why did God rest? No, he wasn't tired. Get out of here. He was tired. He wasn't tired. God wasn't He wasn't tired. Everything he wanted to do had been done. It was finished. It was complete in 7 days. The verdict pronounced on earth, on each part of creation, it was good. It's less about moral quality than it is an aesthetic, decorative. These created things are beautiful and beneficial. How would you describe God's creative work in these verses? In the verses that we read. If he, well, go ahead.
Sister Bob said in order.
In order, orderly.
like Jesus began and baptized on seventh day, rest. Sister Boz said organized and in order.
Yeah, he did everything. He organized things and did them in order, no doubt. What were you saying, Bro Brown? Right. From nothing, yeah. On a spectrum from impromptu to well-planned, where would you put God's creative work in Genesis 1? Right at the top. We almost finished. Now we arrive at the creation of humans. God says, let us make mankind in our image, in our likeness. And this used to be one of my favorite verses. Because they were saying, what does the word us mean?
Well planned.
Us means well planned? Huh? Right. Because now back to my same question, what does the word us mean? The best definition that I had for us is it's a group of people which in the one who is speaking is a part of. Go ahead, Brother Avon.
Us means more than one person.
Right. A group of people which the one who's speaking is a part of. Now God seems plural. Now God seems plural because that's what the word Elohim, it's plural. What's going on here? Here are a few options, okay? God is speaking to the royal court, including angels. He might be, because it doesn't mention about angels being there. Well, it doesn't mention when angels were created. God is addressing the other members of the Trinity. While we affirm that Jesus and the Spirit have always existed, the original readers of Genesis would not have gotten the allusion to the Trinity. They didn't know about the Trinity. They all God, one. God is using a royal we, as other kings, queens might do when making a proclamation. What does it mean that humans are made in God's image? Now that's another thing. I'm glad we're going to have to end on this note. What does it mean that humans are made in God's image? Does it mean that we look like God? Answer my question. What does it mean to you?
God's being existence, not held to the same confined as our existence. He can be one and many at the same time.
Okay, I can take some of that. But what more in line I was thinking with was, when it says we are made in the image of God, they're not talking about a physical image of God, but the attributes that God has to move, to speak, to do, those things, that's what they're talking about. Because if the creatures, were they all made in the image of God? Or no, they just said the humans they're made in the image of God. Well, they're animals. They got 2 arms, 2 eyes, 2 ears, nose, a mouth, legs. But the way we live and the way we do things, we can tell wrong from right. Can animals do that? Sometimes if you beat them or not, they will. But man is different from animals. And I know some people, and I won't, well, I'll just mention this. Some people will want to say there's a dog in heaven. Do dogs go to heaven? They don't have the spirit as far as I know, but some people bury them and put them in coffins, everything else, just like they do human beings. The focus is more on the function. Now we talk about in the image of God. Focus is more on the function. Humans are like God in that we do things that God does rather than form. We don't have the physical appearance of God. We perform our own versions of God's activities and powers. God speaks, commands, names, blesses. God looks at and beholds the world. God makes and makes freely. God is concerned with the goodness or perfection of things. God addresses, I can't pronounce this word, I tried it so many times, other living creatures and provides for their sustenance. Oh my goodness. God exercises speech and reason, freedom and doing and making, and the powers of contemplation, judgment, and care. Here we go with Brueggemann again. I don't know who this guy was, but he was a commentator. Writes that this is similar to the manner of a king who establishes statues of himself to assert his sovereign rule where the king himself cannot be present. Humans then are not just minions, but we are sub-rulers put on earth to exercise authority in the same manner God himself would exercise it. From our perspective as Christians, much later, we also should use Jesus as a model of carrying out God's rule on earth. Humans are given a special commission to rule over the fish, the birds, livestock, animals, and all creatures. Here, this does not mean humans could eat these animals. You know, you don't read anything about humans eating meat till later on in the Bible. And I don't even think, and I read somewhere that you don't ever even heard of, and I find it's kind of hard to believe that animals were not even eating meat. Is that so? You know, I find that hard. I find it, I don't know. Genesis 1:29-30 also limits the food. Now, this is 1:29-30. Also limits the food for animals and humans to fruit and green plants. I didn't actually look at Genesis 1:29-30, but I would believe that way. Yeah, they didn't eat meat. Well, we know they did not eat meat till later on. And you know, that's one of the things that they say that maybe the appendix had something to do with, because we don't know what the appendix is for nowadays. As Kissling writes, the commission to rule over the animate world of creatures cannot mean to dominate them and hunt them into extinction. But you wouldn't, hey, mankind has hunted several animals into extinction. I know about the buffalo, and there's all kind of animals that there are very few of them left in the world because of man. And I'm going to end right there. Everybody's in here now. And I'm glad I'm through. No, I got one more. Next week. Does anybody have any requests for prayers? What's wrong with her? What's wrong? She got COVID? I got you. Bob? Let us go to our Heavenly Father in prayer. The God and Father of us all, we're glad to come together to be with other Christians and to study your word and to learn about what you did in the beginning. Father, now we come on behalf of Amy, who is at home, our sister, who is dealing with an ailment. We ask, Father, that you ease her suffering and ease her pain, and doctors may find a way to get her back to a reasonable portion of her health. We come praying for Brother Wayne, who is also having problems with his back. Be with him, Father, and help him to do those things that he needs to do and answer all his requests. And we come praying for Avon's mother, who has come down with COVID. Father, many have come down with this illness, and it's not over yet. And it might be around for a long time. But we ask that you just be with us and help us to do those things that we need to do. Be with us, Father, until we come together again. For these and all blessings we do ask in Jesus' name. Amen. Another day, another dollar.